It's that soft spot of the afternoon where you may be feeling like leaning back in your chair, and it's my job and my privilege to encourage you to lean forward. And no, just because I said lean forward, this is not necessarily a media panel. Quite seriously, we have a great topic, and we have this great idea that we'd like to be very interactive. And to do that, I'm going to need to see you. So I hope that a lot of you will come up close. That said, you're allowed to leave. I won't be offended, but just come as close as you can. Let's fill the chairs up here so we can have a real conversation. This is the Social Transforms the Enterprise. Thank you, guys. Oh my God, totally worked. This is awesome. Nobody is allowed further back than Justin right now. Justin, raise your hand for us. OK, so there you go. So without further ado, I want to invite our panelists up. This is Social Transforms the Enterprise. We have Deep, Clara, Todd, Phil, Adam. Come on up, guys. That's right. Get some energy. So I have to tell you where this topic began before I introduced our panelists. I went to South by Southwest this year, which probably a lot of you were there. Raise your hand if you were there this year. OK, so we have a few people in the audience. And you know, I was looking around at a lot of the fancy consumer apps, and nothing was really all that exciting to me. And then I went to a dinner that was hosted by actually two companies on our panel, LinkedIn and Hearsay. And it seemed like the businesses who were talking very freely about what they were doing with social media, that was exciting. It was really exciting. And it felt to me like industries I never would have expected were moving from an experimental phase with a lot of their social technologies to a more mainstream phase. And so I thought it would be valuable to spend a little bit of time unpacking best practices. Now, those three words, I understand, can be a little bit boring in a panel. Nobody here is going to tell you that they're about to announce a $4 billion valuation. So it is our opportunity to basically raise the stakes and really reach for the newest, coolest, freshest things that businesses are doing with the tools that a lot of you guys represent on the panel. So real quick, we're going to just go down the line. I want you to introduce yourself and give a 2-sentence on what your company is trying to do. We'll start with you, Clara.
Sure. Clara Shih, CEO and founder of Hearsay Social. Our technology allows large organizations to do social selling on consumer social networking sites like Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Google+.
Cool. I'm Adam Pisoni, the CTO and co-founder of Yammer, and we're trying to make companies more open and connected.
I'm Todd Pierce, the Executive Vice President of Operations at Salesforce, and we're the #1 CRM company that pioneered social and mobile across selling, support, and marketing.
I'm Deep Nishar. I'm responsible for the products at LinkedIn, the world's largest professional network.
And I'm Phil Libin. I'm the CEO of Evernote. We make an external brain, products to help people and companies deal with a daily overload of information.
So when I first talked to Phil about being on this panel, he said, I can't figure out why you would ask me to be on this panel since
Still can't.
Evernote's not social. That's why we're not starting with you. Bad omen. We're going to start actually with Deep. So LinkedIn has emerged as essentially the de facto enterprise tool for finding talent. It's also how most of us stalk each other before meetings. So by now, it's safe to say the company has disrupted the human resources industry. What's coming next for you guys?
So the way to think about LinkedIn in the enterprise is that we want to move from serendipity to science. So people generally, when they're looking for talent, it's like, hey, Clara, do you know any interesting people in this space I'm looking to hire? Or, I need to get into this organization. Phil, do you know someone there? And it's serendipitous, right? If you don't run into each other somewhere, you don't think of them, et cetera. And what we want to do is move that into the science of saying, oh, I need someone with like 5 years of experience in iOS development who's worked at these 3 different things, has launched 2 apps, and how do I find them? So you find them through LinkedIn. We want to be able to do the same thing, not just for hiring, but also marketing and selling. So think about your Salesforce. The way Salesforces typically get run is you have a big marketing organization. They come and they get you a lot of leads. They go into your favorite CRM system, usually Salesforce. And then they get assigned the leads, whether it's by territory, it's by size of the opportunity, and various different ways in which you do it. And it's really dumb luck if a salesperson lands a great account or not from some perspective. What if instead you could go into your favorite CRM system as a salesperson, and it told you, here are the 5 prospects you should go after because you are incredibly well connected with them through somebody you know, either at your own company or through your network. And you can now eliminate cold calling in favor of warm prospecting. That's really what we are talking about.
So this phrase, and earlier this year I actually authored a big feature on you guys, and you were really big on this phrase this year.
Yeah.
Eliminate, what is it, cold calling in favor of the warm handshake,
yeah.
as it were. But this is a crowded space. It's not like hiring, which was essentially open for disruption. Lots of people are opposed to cold calling and trying to figure out ways to use technology to give you more insight. What's going to differentiate what you guys are doing?
It's really our science that's based on both understanding the vast professional graph that we have by virtue of over 225 million professionals on LinkedIn, and the amazing data science that we put on top of it that brings it all together and brings it to life.
Got it. So we're going to come back to that.
Okay.
But let's jump over to Clara. Now, so Hearsay Social helps salespeople leverage their social networks to understand and connect to their customers. So as more social services are popping up, from Instagram to Message Me, for example, how does the tool change in order to reach everyone? When I first met you, for example, you had just authored a book on one particular platform, Facebook.
Yeah, so one of my investors, John Sakota at NEA, wrote a very interesting article recently in TechCrunch about the age of the verticalized SaaS companies, and talking about that in this day and age where everything is in the cloud and it's easy to provision and manage and maintain, that a lot of the value that you can drive for the enterprise actually stems from getting really deep into the business process of that company. And that's exactly the approach that we've taken. When I started the company with my co-founder Steve 3.5 years ago, one of the first set of organizations that we interfaced with were banks and insurance companies. And any of you who are at a bank or have worked in financial services, you know that one of the #1 objections in the enterprise sales cycle is around compliance. And so whether it's compliance or understanding specifically what a financial advisor looks for, or exactly what kind of product information a property and casualty agent has to give to a small business customer versus an individual, those insights, that deep business process integration has really been key to us to really take these social networking sites and drive them deeper into the enterprise and go from likes to sales.
So I hear you, and what I would love to understand more about is in 2013, what are the most important of the social tools based on what your clients are needing from you? And are they changing, or are they pretty static?
That's a really great question. So the way that we think about it, and certainly this has been consistent with what our customers tell us, is that from a social networking perspective, so the social graph, that seems pretty saturated. LinkedIn is a professional graph, Facebook is the personal graph, Twitter is asymmetric graph, and Google Plus, emerging question mark. So I think that seems pretty saturated. Now, I would distinguish social networks and the social graph, which are people and relationship centric, from social media companies, where it's really first and foremost not about the person or the relationships that you're connected to, but actually the content. So YouTube is a social media company where it's about the videos. Pinterest about the pin boards, so on and so forth. Instagram is about the photos, Vine's about the video. So it turns out that social networks, social graphs are ideal distribution for social media, but they're slightly different things, and I think there's still a lot more innovation that's happening on the social media side.
So you're helping folks to really penetrate the social networks necessarily. Are you also helping them with what you classify as the social media sites? Are you telling them what they should be doing with Instagram, for example?
Certainly that's part of it. It's hard to unbundle those two. Oftentimes what performs well, what's most engaging on social networks are when you use rich media to engage your customers and prospects. And that's been a key part of a lot of our customers' strategies.
Cool. We're going to come back to that. And we've just heard from 2 companies that are really providing the tools to help business. And Salesforce, of course, does that too, Todd. But I'm really interested in hearing about some of the ways that you guys are using social inside of your company to basically transform some of the traditional processes. And there's just this one very cool story you were telling me about hiring. So
yeah, so one of the things that I think social is really an opportunity to rethink how your business works, so how you connect with your customers externally, but also how you operate. And as you mentioned, I'm responsible for setting up a shared service center. and our first shared service center, and most large enterprises do not like their shared service center. And so we really asked our question.
And Todd, just what is a shared service center?
So that is where organizations consolidate IT, HR, back office functions to try to get better efficiency, lower cost. It's a very traditional thing in the playbook. But historically, a lot of organizations have struggled with the experience, the internal employee experience or the external customer experience.
Sure.
And we think that social and mobile is an opportunity to completely transform that. And we're using our own company as a way to experiment and learn, what if you reconceptualize, redesign things from the ground up with this new thinking? Because I think social is not only about the technology, it's also about the human software. And I think the insights that we're getting around what really motivates people, what really unlocks their engagement, their participation, their creativity and their innovation, that's the real deep potential here that we're trying to work with. So when we were setting up this office, we really started to look, and as you know, LinkedIn has transformed kind of social recruiting, so you can access everyone. But as soon as you bring them into the organization, most organizations still do a very traditional kind of approach, one-on-one interviewing, panel interviews. And the reality is it can be cumbersome, costly, and disappointing. Frequently people, you're either not happy with the job that you got or with the situation, right? So fundamentally, I believe hiring is broken. And as you're building out a new function, if you don't get hiring right, you can't get any of the downstream processes. So we said, what if we just completely redesign this? And so we've been pioneering for the last 9 months internally, building out our service center using this idea. And we started off with completely blowing up the paradigm about how you do hiring. So I created a video, and we used LinkedIn and Facebook to identify people that would be potentially interested in filling one of these internal support roles. And we said, we're throwing out job descriptions, we're throwing everything. You define your job, you define your challenge, you define your team approach. You just come to this one-day event, and we'll hire the teams that have the right ideas. And we didn't know if anybody would come. Right? And we were really looking for that competitive talent, for people that are not active job seekers. And so we had folks come up, 44 people showed up in Portland for our very first event that we did, and we were blown away by the results. I mean, the level of social intelligence and our ability to hire teams rather than individuals has transformed our performance. So
44 people show up. Tell us the story.
Okay. So 44 people show up, and they're completely disoriented because there's no job descriptions. They've had, you know, just minimal screening. They've done a video where they've kind of done a video pitch about themselves. We've done a video where we've pitched the idea. And so we set up a chatter group, which is our product for social collaboration. And we've been chattering. They've been chattering with each other. They've been meeting before to start to build their teams because they want to win. They want to have the winning team. So they've been collaborating. They've been meeting. So they come up and they're very curious. We start the day off with really focusing on social intelligence. So we talk to them about head, heart, body community, what we're trying to build, give them some tools, and really change the tenor so that you can bring your whole self, be very authentic in this process. We try to get the real person and start relationship building, as opposed to the traditional hiring process is this projected kind of superficial level. And we think that really gets in the way of good decision making and really building the kind of culture. Most hiring is kind of culture screening, and we want to be culture creating and really creating this new level of engagement. So people came, they were completely disoriented but very curious. And throughout the day, we saw the teams change and merge, and then in the afternoon, they actually picked their problems. So we had 8 business problems, real business problems that we're trying to solve, and they went in and innovated and worked, and so we watched them in that process. And then they came and pitched to panels of employees, and then that night, all of the hiring managers, and there were about 20 of us there, stayed that night, debriefed everyone, everything that we observed, all the assessments throughout the day, and then the next day had offers out to 12 people.
And did all 12 accept?
Yes. It was unbelievable because we had gone through this relationship building and this sense of really understanding, okay, what's it going to be like?
So that is completely a physical manifestation of the digital products that we have grown to use in our consumer life.
Yeah.
And you were talking about chatter. We have Adam, co-founder of Yammer, on our. And when I say Yammer, you don't work for Yammer anymore. You work for Microsoft, right?
True.
Yeah.
Yammer's part of Microsoft.
How's that going?
It's going really well. I mean, when we started Yammer,
when did Microsoft acquire you? I'm sorry.
They acquired us almost a year ago last week.
Okay.
So in July of last year.
Okay.
So,
happy anniversary.
Thank you very much. I know, you're still in. When we started Yammer, what we didn't know at the time, we just wanted to bring social networking into the enterprise. What we didn't realize at the time was that this would be part of some larger movements that were already happening within companies, where companies were already starting to think about how to become more agile, how to respond to their customers faster, and beginning to realize that the answer was in how well they could empower their employees, get faster feedback from them. And so we were obviously pretty successful up until the acquisition of Microsoft. The big change now is we can think of just a much larger scale. We had reached around 8 million users. Microsoft Office has 1 billion users worldwide. So our mission hasn't changed. In fact, we think it's accelerated just at a very, very different scale now.
So give me an example of, say, the best case study that you've seen with the tool.
I have so many case studies. My favorite case studies right now are the ones...
We have only 29 minutes.
No, I'm going to take 20 for a case study.
And he gets 1 minute.
No, I'll give you, yeah. My favorite case studies are the non-knowledge worker ones, because we've had this weird thing in companies today where we divide our company into knowledge workers and non-knowledge workers. If they have emails or they don't. Right. And companies are starting to realize that every employee is a knowledge worker. We need that engagement and feedback from everybody. So one of my favorite case studies is Red Robin's, literally a hamburger chain, who's just trying to figure out how to run a hamburger chain better. How do you release burgers faster? How do you get faster feedback on what's going on? And they've connected all of their employees, the servers, the store owners, and they use that to literally, in one case, release a burger faster, where that process would have taken a lot of planning, they wouldn't have gotten a lot of feedback, but they just let the stores come together and organize. They also realized that they'd make more money if they had more people go to the bar. And instead of just having the home office figure that out and push it down, they let the stores iterate and organize and figure out ideas between them. And so the amount of innovation that they've seen from the bottom up is an incredible example, especially because, again, it's not technology, it's not what you'd expect there'd be so much impact.
So in that example specifically, did you all help them to figure out how to use that tool, or was that something that they figured out on their own?
I'd say a little of both. I mean, as sort of Todd mentioned, having social be successful in companies, we're beyond it being a technology problem. It's not at all. The biggest competitor for a company like Yammer isn't Salesforce or Google, it's sort of entrenched management culture that doesn't want increased transparency, that doesn't want to empower their employees. And so we've certainly been very successful in not only providing the software, but providing a consultancy really that helps bring these best practices across peers to these companies. So they often come to us knowing that there's something here, knowing they want to empower their employees, and we help say, well, here's some things other companies have tried, you could try this, to try to drive that, to prove the value to that individual employee, to the individual manager, all the way up to the CEO.
So what you're talking about, Deep, what you talked about, Todd, Clara, it all has to do with this idea of taking collaboration as it exists and just amplifying the heck out of it. And so that brings me to Phil here, and the reason why you're on our panel. It's because it's very personal. I use Evernote all the time, and it has increased the collaboration for me in the office and actually at home. Actually, most of our groceries are now bought because your software helps us to remember what to buy. So I'm curious how you think about social when it comes to your product and how you thought about it as you began building your product.
Well, this panel makes a lot more sense to me if I reverse the title. It isn't so much about how social transforms the enterprise. For us, it was about how the enterprise transforms social. When we started out, like Evernote was explicitly antisocial. Like we would say,
antisocial.
Yeah, we would say Evernote is not social. Evernote is antisocial. Evernote doesn't care about your friends. Evernote doesn't care about your friend's dog. We just care about you. We care about what's on your mind. And this came from a really personal desire. Like when we built Evernote, I didn't want another social tool. Like I'm an introvert, I'm kind of a shy person. I wasn't looking for more connections. I wasn't looking for another platform to tell the world how few friends I had. Like I just wanted to get stuff done myself. And that's all we built for. We built for something that let us be productive. But then what we realized is all of a sudden, without really thinking about it, or maybe with a little bit of thought, we were no longer individuals, we were now in a company, and kind of a non-trivial company. And we were still using Evernote to manage it. And a lot of our users, we did surveys, and it turned out like 70% of our users were using Evernote at work for work stuff.
Right. And
also at home for their home stuff. And so as we started thinking more seriously about enterprise, we realized that as an individual, there's a lot of solo work, but in work, there's really not that much. Like being smarter at work, accomplishing something at work really is about working with other people. And so we became social kind of as a byproduct of taking the work environment seriously, but we're still deeply antisocial ourselves. Like we're still not about, like we want you to have fewer conversations, not more conversations. We want you to accomplish things, and sometimes to accomplish things, unfortunately, you have to work with other people, but we kind of want to minimize that conversation step and just skip you forward to the getting things done step. So we kind of want the collaboration to be an automatic emergent property of everyone just using Evernote for their own good. And we are seeing more and more of that, and it's definitely transforming our thinking about it.
So Phil, you talk about social for having fewer conversations versus having more conversations.
Right.
And it seems to me like social in its best case, it's not about helping you have fewer conversations or more conversations. It's about helping you have more efficient conversations with a more efficient group of people. Would you say that's an accurate description of what these tools are for?
So I think for us, it isn't about conversations at all. Like the conversation is a byproduct. It's about actually being smarter, making better decisions at work, being more effective. And we kind of thought, so I'm a big game player. I think of everything in video game terms. I'm sure everyone here does. When I was thinking about Evernote, early on I thought, okay, we have a great single player game in Evernote. Like you can play Evernote solo and have a really great experience, but we need a co-op mode. We need like an Evernote co-op mode. I want to be able to play Evernote with my coworkers and have just as much fun, have just as much of a fulfilling experience of getting stuff done together. And so we think about it that way. We literally think of it as the collaboration, the communication is a byproduct of actually accomplishing something. And to the extent that we can actually reduce the amount of time you spend thinking about conversations and increase the amount of time you spend thinking about the stuff that you're supposedly having conversations about, right. The better you are. And I do think a lot of the social tools here are kind of moving quickly in that direction, letting you do that.
So Clara, I have a question for you. You look like you're about to chime in.
Well, what I was just going to say was I get where Phil is coming from, and that's the mission of Evernote, but there's also inherent value in sharing, as we see from the billion-plus people who are tweeting and posting on LinkedIn and on Facebook. And so the question becomes, why are they doing this? And I think to your point, Jesse, the cost of staying in touch has just gone down. The cost of consuming and both also speaking has gone down. We've invented these new communication modes that just didn't exist before. Liking, commenting, that's a very low cost, lightweight way to engage. And so there are more people engaging more than they would have previously. But if we take a step back, it's actually, we've seen this over the evolution of communication. This has happened when we went from in-person meetings only to phone calls, and then phone calls to email, now email to social. Each time the cost of staying in touch goes down, so on net, we stay in touch with more people. We have bigger social networks. This is true professionally as well as personally. And it's neither good nor bad, it's just the reality of what happens when it's more efficient to get in touch.
So in every transition, and that's sort of a beautiful outline that you've drawn. In every transition, there's this period of great discomfort while we try to figure out what the heck to do with the tool, right? There was that whole period of time when people thought in the mid-90s it was okay to use their cell phone in the theater. Now we all know you don't do that, right? So what are we learning about social right now, vis-a-vis, when it's useful and when it's just exhausting?
Big question.
For me, it's really jumped. Like it's well over on the exhausting side. Like for me personally, the line is in the consumer space. Like I wanted to. I just got a Sonos system a few months ago, so I kind of wired up my house with Sonos, which is fantastic. I love. Like I listen to music now, which I never really used to do much before. And I thought, all right, let me figure out what I'm going to do for music. And everyone said, go with Spotify.
Right.
Like, great. Okay, I'm going to go with Spotify. I'm going to pay them $10 a month. And I set it up, and I had never had a Spotify account before. And I spent like the first hour pouring through it and trying to turn off every single thing that would like communicate to my friends what I was listening to. Because like it terrifies me that anyone would know that I just listened to the dwarves from The Hobbit singing Misty Mountain like over and over and over again. I don't need anyone to know that. It's my business. So I spent like an hour.
Is that why you're sharing that on camera?
I spent an hour shutting all of that stuff off.
I knew that because I was
Please do not
also
tweet
listening
that
to that.
because
yeah, that was a purely hypothetical example.
But Phil,
But then I got to the office. After an hour, I got to the office. That was a Friday. I got to the office on Monday, and 3 people in the office were like, hey, I saw you set up a Spotify account. And I was like, God damn it. I just want to listen to music. I don't want it to judge me. So for me, on the consumer side, the social is way over on the
But I think you said it well, which is when we get to work, a lot of what we need to do, we have very little to do alone. Most of what we do with other people.
Yeah.
It just happens to be that up until now, we had to very selectively choose who we were working with, and nobody else had any context on that.
Totally.
I almost look at social as the other side of big data, where we intuitively understand that there's value in getting information about what's happening.
Right.
It's the sort of human side of big data. It's, man, if more of our conversations and collaboration could be a little more open, then other people we don't even know could benefit from it to be able to do their job. But there is, to your question earlier, there's this calibration period where suddenly you realize that, wait, people can hear me. If I complain about a coworker, that actually affects someone's feelings. I used to be able to do that in email and nobody knew. And so it's interesting to watch companies go through a calibration. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to point out problems. It's okay for executives to get feedback. Right. Those are all difficult calibrations for most companies.
Yeah, I think you were talking about efficiency. I think efficiency is only one part of the equation, and organizations have spent so much energy on that. There is this other side, which is around the openness, the effectiveness, and are we creating a better experience for customers? Are we creating more value? And so kind of building on your thing, we have a chatter group internally where we have employees called airing of grievances, where they talk about the things that are pain points.
Right.
And it's not an efficiency site, you know, in terms of how quickly we can process transactions, but it's to help us have more empathy and to understand. And then there are connections of people that would normally not deal with a problem. So efficiency tends to say, what's the problem? Let's route it to the person to handle that.
Right.
This kind of openness allows people to say, hey, here's my unmet need, and it can come from anywhere. That may be more efficient, but it's not just the traditional kind of efficiency. It's opening up in a whole new way and connecting in a whole new way and generating value ultimately for our customers, our internal employees, kind of connecting them in whole new ways.
Well, it does seem to me like 2013 is in some way the year that on the consumer side, we all realize the value of keeping our mouths shut. At the same time as in the enterprise side, we all realize the value of opening our mouths.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
That's actually, yeah.
So to that end,
That's quotable, you guys.
Quick, tweet it.
Your friends want to hear that.
That creates this huge digital mess of information that is not nearly as clean as a lot of the program structured data that we have had coming in for a very long time. And I'll throw this one to the bona fide data scientist that I know well on the panel here. How do you take all of that data that is being produced right now and make something of it that provides insight to businesses rather than just clutter?
Yeah, just one word, carefully.
Yeah.
You know, this is, you know, as I was saying earlier, this is about moving from serendipity into science. And one of the best ways you can make good science is if you have good data coming into the structure. The good news with a network like LinkedIn is when people are in it, they are logged in. They've given you a bunch of their information, which is all real. There are very few Jesus Christ superstars on LinkedIn, if you know what I mean from some of the early days of social networking.
Yes.
People like to set themselves up as, you know, all these superpower creatures. And what happens as a result of that is you're getting fairly clean data into the system. Also on LinkedIn, you don't have this issue of, hey, Phil is listening to dwarves. I mean, honestly, people don't care, and they don't even talk about that. And we don't have those kinds of apps on LinkedIn. What you instead have is Phil just read, you know, the great cover story that Jesse wrote about LinkedIn. I mean, that's awesome, right, for everybody
Props.
involved.
Thanks.
Great props. So that's pretty awesome, because then, you know, Phil's connections will read that and they're like, oh, there's something interesting here. We should be doing something with it. What we are doing is we are harvesting and harnessing all this data so that that salesperson, you know, who has anyone here sold for a living, by the way? Yeah, it's like frigging hard, isn't it? Seriously, people seem to think like, selling, we build great products, it sells itself. Well, maybe not. And I've been on hundreds of sales calls in order to personally experience what it means to sell, and it is really, really hard. Think about going door after door, and you believe you have the best possible product, and people look at you like, yeah, not today, not interested, come back tomorrow. That's if they are good. They are like good to you. Otherwise, they'll be like, come back in 3 months, and so they'll prolong the conversation. If instead now, you are going in and you know that you're not cold calling someone. This person, this organization has a very specific need. That has been harvested from the data, and you're going with a great warm introduction. All of a sudden, your conversation is different. It's no longer about selling to someone, it's helping the other person buy, because you know that they're ready to buy. You're going in through a trusted source that you have a mutual connection with. All of a sudden, it changes things. And, you know, we are seeing data to that effect. So the Savo group increased their revenue by $1 million in 18 months by using sales management tools. NetSuite has, effectively deployed us to their salespeople because they wanted to energize the sales force, which, if you do cold calling, after a while it becomes a drudgery. DocuSign, 90% of their salespeople use LinkedIn Sales Solutions product. And it is all because this is the way, this is the future of selling.
And it's early days for the LinkedIn Sales Solutions product too, of course, right? I mean, the Sales Navigator is just, are you out of beta? Are you formally launched?
Yeah, we are launched.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I think this whole idea about these large amounts of data, what I see with social, by putting social into business processes, you're really putting context and really making the information much more valuable. I mean, think how much information, particularly in large enterprises, is sitting out there, but it doesn't have the right kind of context, and so people don't know if it's relevant, if it's accurate, how to use it. And so I think this social layer around the enterprise content really is creating, making it much easier to use. And then this whole idea of feed first is making sure that it's real time, that it's relevant, that timeliness. And these are two problems that I think social really addresses that's driving a lot of the benefit.
So I want to open up to our audience here. We got a lot of folks here. And we'll start right back there with Mr. Schrag. Give us your name before you begin.
Michael Schrag with MIT. I think this is great, but there's something here that I think you're leaving out, because there are multiple platforms inside the enterprise. You look at a Microsoft, there's Yammer, but there's also SharePoint. I think Evernote is, brilliant. But I think Evernote, if I were to review Evernote, I'd say, my gosh, I should repurpose this and socialize it. And so what I'm sort of curious about is, and same thing with LinkedIn as a vehicle for it. So how are we helping people inside the enterprise pick what's the best way of sharing or being personal? My fear, listening to you, is that you've done a wonderful job of siloizing what you've done best and leaving it up to the user to decide, oh, well, this is Twitterable, this is a comment, this is Yammer, this is SharePoint, etc.
Great question.
Yeah, so what I would offer, Michael, is that there's a context, right, within the enterprise, and it's largely a professional context. And it doesn't mean that when we are getting our cup of coffee in the morning or we are having lunch with our colleagues, we don't talk about our kids or we don't talk about the barbecue we may have that weekend. And then when we are having that barbecue with our friends, we mostly talk about social things, and sometimes we do talk about work and how things are going. So it's largely the context in which you should be. So what we do find for LinkedIn is the usage really picks up at about 7 or 8 in the morning and continues through about 6 or 7 p.m. on the desktops, because that's what people are largely using. And so I think for the most part, people kind of get it. They understand that in the professional context, you want to use LinkedIn. In a different context, you want to use any of the other products that are out there.
It seems to me, though, that part of this question has to do with how these tools get deployed in the enterprise, how you teach the people who work in the enterprise to use them, and which you select, and who the decision makers are on that.
So I think it's changing, though, right, Jesse, which is deploying tools in the enterprise is an old school way of selling into the enterprise. These days, you bring your own device, you choose your own products, and the enterprise adopts it from the ground level.
Is that true with everything, or is that true only with
That's
a few?
true with the most successful things out there, right?
It's
right
true with
now,
us,
isn't
yeah.
it? It's true with them, it's true with us, it's true with Dropbox. I mean, you take some of the...
So interestingly enough for us, because we are often bringing LinkedIn or Facebook into the enterprise, there is a groundswell of demand, but we sell through the traditional enterprise sale, because you have to think about who our customers are. These are large Fortune 500 banks and insurance companies. I mean, they're not going to allow their people, they actually literally block every social media site as the default. And while it's true that a lot of the employees bring their own iPads, I think they try to ignore it for as long as possible. It gets to a point where they can no longer ignore it. And so we come in and we convince them first and foremost that there is a safe and secure and compliant way to do this, and this is how. Then we say, well, concurrently we say this is a business proposition. Whether you want to hire or sell or market, you can't not be on here. And although there are risks to being on, there's even greater risk to not being on social media. And then thirdly, I think this was a point that Deep made earlier, there is the very difficult process of change management. And cultural change is one of it, getting executive sponsorship is one of it, but it's also just the blocking and tackling of training your sales reps. In some cases, these sales reps are not of a demographic where they can type really fast and would know Facebook and LinkedIn on a very natural basis.
Is that still true for some group of people?
Oh, absolutely, no question.
So other questions in the audience? I don't mean to cut anybody off, but right back here, and your name.
Hey, Deep,
Ryan.
not to pile on. But
Give us your name and company,
I'm Ryan with Qualtrics. I'm watching Twitter blow up here when you're talking about cold calling, being a company that's made 65,000 calls in a quarter. Where are you guys at in this process? I've heard Jeff Weiner say that in 5 years, no one will be cold calling. You touched on it a little bit. Can you give us, are you in the second inning on this? So there's no cold calling anymore?
So,
where are you at?
I'll give you an example since you called me out by name, Ryan, which is yesterday I got an email from one of your salespeople saying, hey, would you like to use Qualtrics? Well, there are two problems with that. One, we already use Qualtrics. And two, they should have known that you and I are connected on LinkedIn, and they should have used you to get to me.
So, I think...
So it will change, but it will change slowly.
I think like with all, cold calling needs to die and will die, but it's not going to die because LinkedIn kills it. You guys are going to play a big role. It's going to die because it's heinously ineffective.
Yeah.
It's like, I have never in my life, and I never will, bought anything as a result of a cold call or a cold email. Never, ever, and I never will. And everyone that I know that I have any influence over, I tell the same thing to. So there is no way that anyone would ever sell anything to Evernote as a result of a cold call. So that's just dead. That's dead on arrival. That's dead because it deserves to die. It's dead because it's horribly obnoxious and it was always a bad idea.
And yet the vast majority of industries and salespeople still cold call.
I don't
the vast
believe
majority of heads of sales still metric their people on how many calls did you make, how many emails did you send.
But not the vast majority of sales. The vast majority of salespeople.
Yes.
The vast majority of salespeople are wasting their time. The vast majority of revenue is I do not believe for a minute that the vast majority of revenue is made as a result of cold
Well, that's why we're undergoing this transition.
Correct.
I mean, the one-to-one relationship is where the power is going to be. The more connected you can be, the more you can understand the need of the customer and how you're going to meet that, you're going to be more effective.
Yeah.
That's right, and there's two reasons for it. One is this spam problem that we got from Web 1.0. The second problem is just that as a society, over the last decade or two, there's been this loss in trust in traditional institutions. Whether it's big government, big media, except for Fortune, large corporations, there's never been greater distrust and skepticism of these institutions. And what's happening is that instead, people are choosing to trust their friends, their colleagues, people that they follow. And that's really changing, I think, the face of marketing, of sales, of recruiting.
Yeah, and Ryan, to go back, I don't think you were like calling anyone out. You're asking a genuine question, which is, hey, when can I stop making those 65,000 calls a quarter?
Today.
And I think it will happen over a period of time. Think of it as...
You could have stopped 40 years ago.
No, but...
You could have stopped when Death of a Salesman was written. It's like Willie Loman was not a miserable failure because he didn't have LinkedIn.
15 to 20 years ago, the only way people advertised was brand advertising, right? It was spray and pray. It was just billboards, it was TV, it was radio. There was no targeting. And then we started going from CPM-based advertising to CPC, where people are like, hey, someone is at least reacting, I'll pay for that. Very soon, over the next decade, I think advertising or marketing is going to go to CPA, which is cost per action. Similarly, selling is going to move away from people just managing funnels and saying, hey, it's a numbers game. You make 1,000 calls, you get 10 customers. You make 10,000 calls, get 100 customers. What's not to know? It's going to change from there, right? It's going to change to you're getting through connections, you're getting through warm introductions to people you trust, and you're going to close better deals, which are more relationship-driven and less transactional.
And I think it's what happens after the sale as well. So it's through the whole life cycle, service, support, everything.
Thank you, Ryan. You really teed that up. I want to jump over to another question.
Dan Levin from Box. Okay, guys, the question was, how will social transform the enterprise? So let's get down to it. 5 years from now, are we all using email to communicate, or are we all using Tibber, God forbid, or Chatter, or Yammer, or whatever?
I think we're moving to feed first. It's social, it's mobile, it's feed first. The feed will be the way that you'll process and interact.
I don't think the value of social necessarily is in feeds, and email is sort of a feed itself. And I'm not trying to get in the weeds here, but really the difference between email and social comes down to this one subtle difference. In email, addressing and permissions are the same. If I want to send you something, you're the only one who can see it, and vice versa. With social, those are separate. I can send you something, but say other people can see it. And so it's because of that small distinction, it allows for discovery, it decreases the amount of unwanted messages because people don't have to send something to you just so you can see it. So that sort of subtle difference combined with the increased need for information sharing, for knowledge sharing so that people can have better context to do their jobs, more communication will shift to be more open. Now, you can argue about whether that's a specific technology, this or that. I would argue that we'll probably see changes in email itself to allow for it to be more open too. The key is that more information will be more open. And that is definitely what we'll see, is that more of what we do is not just ourselves. You know, there's still today people like create a document on their own desktop and later share it. But we're going to see more and more people creating documents in the shareable place because that's what we do. We work together on things. And so we will, in the next 5 years, see a much more power shift to the bottom of the company, shift towards people sharing and connecting outside of their org, outside of just who they can connect to with their bosses and so on.
I largely agree with Adam. I mean, email, I think email will be around. It could be replaced, but it wouldn't be replaced by social as we know it. Just because social today satisfies a different set of use cases than email currently does. And if you look again historically at these communication tools, some of the best sales meetings, many of them are still done face-to-face. Phone still plays a very key role in how we communicate, but I think the overall mix kind of shifts over time as we have a bigger repertoire of communication tools.
I agree. I actually think in a couple of years from now, social will look different than it looks today, and email will look different than it does today. I think that, especially in the enterprise, social's vestigial heritage from the consumer space it influenced it in ways that we only learned recently are not well suited, for example, for the enterprise. For example, in the consumer space, it's more about who you know and keeping track of them, whereas in the enterprise, it's more about getting the information you need regardless of who has it, whether you know them or not. And in fact, you already could talk to the people you know.
Okay,
so
I want to jump in here because we have time for only one more question. So I want to offer up an opportunity. And let's go right over here. Is that Jim?
Jim Stengel, when the enterprise has all the information it needs, what changes do we need to make them act on it? Or to enable them to act on it?
Companies have to learn how to empower their employees, how to make it okay to innovate and make mistakes, to empower their employees to make decisions, to recognize that the way we do work is different than how we've structured companies historically. We work within networks, but we've organized hierarchically. And so there's going to be huge fundamental tectonic shifts, especially in large enterprises, as they come to terms with it.
Yeah, I think goal setting, performance management, feedback, all that changes.
All that changes.
Phil?
Very specifically, the perfect exact answer to your question, because this is like exactly on point. Information doesn't make sense separated from the action that you're taking where you need it. So in the near future, including this is exactly what we're working on at Evernote, there is no value to just having information in your enterprise. There's only value of having it exactly when you're trying to accomplish something, having exactly the right information for accomplishing it. So in the future, not in 5 years, in the near future, the act of doing something will always carry with it exactly the information from the rest of your company that you need to accomplish that thing. They'll be inseparable. And if they're not inseparable, if it's just information, if it's just threads, if it's just conversations, it'll actually be overwhelming and not useful, and companies will stop using it. It'll all be tied to the specific action.
Yeah. Another way I would phrase this, sorry, if you need to interrupt me, that's okay. Another way I would phrase this is to say, data or information by itself is not as meaningful as is the knowledge and insights that you get from it. And what's happening is right now we are so busy creating this data and information, we haven't figured out, most organizations, on how to create the actionable insights, which are also timely at the point that you need it. And I think that's where the trend will move, and that's not going to happen overnight. There are some organizations who are a lot better at it than others. And the ones who are better at it are going to have massive advantages in the marketplace over the ones who are not.
It'll happen overnight if you use Evernote.
So on that note, I want to invite you guys to join us next year, 2014, when this panel here has agreed to reprise Death of a Salesman for a Social Business Culture. Until then, I'd like to thank our panelists. We have Clara, Adam, Todd, Deep, and Phil, and encourage you to seek them out off stage because this conversation has a long way to go. Thanks, guys. Be back here in 15 minutes when the party begins again.